All right, let me walk you through this. Number 10. The classic American comfort spread. It's somewhere between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. A tray comes through a slot in the door of a death watch cell. On that tray is fried chicken, French fries, a soda, probably not the good kind, probably room temperature, and maybe some strawberries if the kitchen had them. The man inside the cell hasn't slept in 2 days. His lawyers filed a last-minute appeal about an hour ago. He looks at the tray. He might eat. He probably won't. Here's what the record shows. When you go through the last meal requests across years of American executions, 2/3 of them ordered fried food. Fried chicken, French fries, steak, burgers, pie, ice cream. Soda 5 times more often than milk. The average order runs close to 2,800 calories, more than most people eat in a full day. That's not hunger. Nobody on death row is eating because they're hungry. They're eating because of something else entirely. Nearly 4 in 10 requests asked for a brand name specifically. Not just chicken, a particular chain's chicken. Not just a soda, a specific soda. Pepsi, not cola, a name they hadn't said out loud in 15 years. John Wayne Gacy, executed in Illinois in 1994 for the rape and murder of 33 people, ordered 12 fried shrimp, a bucket of original recipe fried chicken, French fries, and a pound of fresh strawberries. Before his arrest, he had managed 3 of that chain's restaurants. That order is not random. That is a man reaching back for the last version of himself that the public version of the story still allowed. A man in Utah in 2010 ordered steak, lobster, apple pie with vanilla ice cream, and watched the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy while he ate. The film request was granted. The meal was served across several hours. He ate. He watched. He was executed when it was over. The strawberry order comes up more than you'd expect across states and decades, and nobody has a clean explanation for it. The fried chicken pattern is consistent enough that death penalty researchers have a name for it: the Southern Plate. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, cornbread, sweet tea. It shows up in Texas records, Georgia records, Oklahoma, Virginia, across 4 decades. These men weren't eating it every night. Most of them couldn't afford it on the prison canteen. They ordered it because it tasted like somewhere before all of this. That's the part most people miss. These aren't last meals. They're last memories, ordered by the pound. And the fact that someone ate it alone in a cell with a guard watching through a slot in the door is what nobody wants to think about too hard. Some inmates don't reach for the familiar. Some of them go somewhere strange or somewhere that only makes sense when you understand what they were trying to say. Number 9. The fast food order. It's a Tuesday in Mississippi in 2012, and somewhere a corrections officer is walking through a prison facility carrying a McDonald's bag. The fries have been cold for 20 minutes. The shakes have already started to separate. He passes through a checkpoint, through a door that takes a key, and keeps walking. Several states allow outside food purchases for last meals as long as the total stays inside the budget cap. Some states have no cap at all. When there's no cap, what sometimes happens is not a meal. It's something closer to a list of everything the prison never gave you, ordered all at once. The largest last meal on record in the American system came from Mississippi in 2012. 2 specific chain pizzas with detailed topping lists: mushrooms, onions, jalapenos, pepperoni, 10 packs of Parmesan, 10 packs of ranch dressing, a family-sized bag of nacho cheese chips, sliced jalapenos, a supersized fries order with extra ketchup and mayonnaise, 2 large strawberry shakes, 2 cherry sodas, 2 pints of strawberry ice cream. The calorie count on that order, when you add it up, comes out around 29,000, more than 10 days worth of food. He ate about half of it before his execution at 6:16 p.m. He did not finish the shakes. Let me tell you what that actually looks like from the kitchen side. Someone has to drive out, pick the order up, bring it back still in the paper bags, walk it through security, deliver it to the cell. By the time it gets there, it is not the meal that existed in that man's memory. It never is. The fries are cold, the ice cream is soft. The burger that meant something specific, the one from the place near wherever he grew up, that burger no longer exists. What arrives is an approximation. The specificity of these orders is the thing worth paying attention to. These aren't descriptions. They're exact transcriptions from a mental catalog that hadn't been accessed in a decade or more. Super size, extra ketchup, extra mayonnaise. Those aren't preferences. Those are memories. That's what a decade and a half of institutionalized food does to a person. It turns the memory of a specific burger into something close to grief. The 29,000-calorie record didn't come from a famous case or a national news story. It came from a state prison in Mississippi, from a man most people have never heard of, and he ate roughly half before stopping. The shakes sat on the tray. There's a category that works differently, not quantity, not brand loyalty, just one object, and what one object can mean when it's all you ask for. Number 8. The symbolic single item. In 1963, a man scheduled to be hanged in Iowa requested one olive, just the one, with the pit still inside. He ate the olive. When the guards prepared his body for burial, they found the pit in his jacket pocket. He had told them before the execution that he hoped an olive tree would grow from his grave, a sign of peace. That detail, the pit in the pocket, turns up in almost every serious account of last meal history. It's been reproduced in photography projects, written about in academic work, analyzed from about 15 different angles. Whether or not the tree story is precisely true, the pit in the pocket is real enough that it stayed in the record for 60 years. A woman executed in North Carolina in 1984, the first woman executed by lethal injection after the death penalty resumed in this country, asked for a bag of cheese-flavored corn puffs and a can of Coca-Cola. That was it. The bag. The can. A man in Texas in 2001 asked for a bag of Jolly Ranchers. No other food. Nothing else. Here's what most people don't get about Jolly Ranchers on death row. Their currency. Hard candy lasts a long time, doesn't melt, can be traded for phone time, for favors, for protection. They move through a prison the way cash moves outside. For a man to ask for them as his final meal is either a statement of total indifference or a gesture toward the only economy he'd known for years. Maybe both. Nobody asked him to explain it, and he didn't. The chaplains who sit with inmates during the last hours describe the single item requests as the hardest to be present for. With a full meal, there's something happening. There's activity. Eating fills time. A single item, a bag of candy, an olive, a can of soda, doesn't do that. It just sits there. And then the time passes. And then it's time. The olive story has stayed in public memory specifically because it refuses the logic of what the last meal is supposed to be. It's not comfort. It's not a feast. It's a pit placed deliberately into a jacket pocket by a man who understood that he still had one small thing to do. The tradition was designed to offer a final kindness. He turned it into a final message. Some requests don't get that. Some get stopped before they arrive. Number 7. The denied request. A man in Texas in 1990 asked for dirt, not food dirt, a lump of it. He made the request calmly, according to the people who were there. He didn't explain it. He sat quietly while they told him no. They brought him yogurt instead. He took the yogurt without comment. There's no constitutional right to a last meal. Courts have settled this consistently. It's a courtesy. The system extends it at its own discretion, and it can withdraw it the same way. Alcohol is refused everywhere, no exceptions on record. Items that aren't food are refused. Anything that can't be sourced within the facility's limits gets cut. Some states have formal prohibited lists. Others leave it to the warden. The man who wanted dirt got yogurt. The man who wanted aged whiskey got nothing resembling it. The case that changed things in a different direction came out of Tennessee. A man scheduled for execution asked that his $20 meal allowance, the full amount Tennessee gives, be spent on a vegetarian pizza and delivered to a homeless shelter near the prison. It's food. It meets the definition. Prison officials said no. Charitable donations are prohibited under the rules. When the story got out, private citizens in Nashville started calling shelters. A radio station organized the first delivery. By evening on the day of his execution, multiple shelters had received more food than they usually saw in a week. Hundreds of pizzas. The refusal created the story. The story created the donations. The policy designed to prevent one act of generosity produced exactly that. At scale. Without the prison controlling any of it. Another man in Tennessee, executed in 2019, tried to do the same thing. He cited the first man by name when he made the request. It was refused again. The dirt request is the one that stays with the people who were there. Several accounts from former Texas prison staff describe it the same way: confusion, discomfort, and then the man accepting the yogurt and sitting back down. He did not explain what the dirt meant. He probably knew they'd say no. He asked anyway. That's all that's on the record. $20. That's Tennessee's last meal budget. The same amount a first-time minimum wage worker earns in about 90 minutes. That's the number the state settled on for the final courtesy it extends to a condemned person before it kills. The system blocks even the final gesture sometimes. But some inmates find a different way to use the meal, not as request, not as statement, but as refusal. Number 6. The uneaten meal. In September 2011, a man in Texas convicted of a racially motivated killing ordered what the kitchen staff would later describe as the most extensive last meal request they'd ever seen. 2 chicken fried steaks smothered in gravy, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet, a large bowl of fried okra, 3 fajitas, 1 pound of barbecue with half a loaf of white bread, a meat lover's pizza, a pint of ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge, 3 root beers. The meal arrived at 4 p.m. He told the guards he wasn't hungry. He was executed at 6. The story was in the news within hours. By the next morning, Texas had announced it was abolishing the special last meal. A practice that had been in place for close to 90 years, that had been extended to hundreds of condemned people across decades, ended not through legislation, not through a court ruling, but through one man ordering everything and eating nothing. One senator wrote a letter. One phone call was made. By afternoon, it was done. That gets to you when you think about what it means. Every person executed in Texas after that day received whatever the rest of the unit was eating. No special plate. No final choice. No last courtesy. The thing that ended it wasn't a reform movement or a policy review. It was a news cycle. Ted Bundy declined to order a last meal in Florida in 19. He was given the standard unit meal: steak, eggs, hash browns, toast, milk, juice. He didn't eat it. Eileen Wuornos, executed in Florida in 2002, said she wasn't hungry and declined. She was given a cup of coffee. The kitchen workers who prepared the 2011 Texas feast and then collected the untouched trays afterward: 2 full chicken fried steaks, 3 fajitas, a full pizza, all of it cold. All of it uneaten had to do something with that food. It was cooked for a specific person. That person was dead. You put it somewhere. You throw it away. And then you go back to the kitchen. There's no protocol for what that moment feels like. It just happens, and you carry it. The meal was designed to give the condemned one final. This man used it to make a choice that ended the tradition for everyone who came after him. Whether that was his intention or not, nobody knows. He didn't say. He just wasn't hungry. There are meals that say something the inmate doesn't intend, something that becomes legible only after you know the whole story. Number 5. The comfort food is Biography. The prison chef who prepared last meals at the Huntsville unit in Texas for years, himself an inmate, said the same thing in every account he ever gave. They don't order what they want. They order where they're from. Food they haven't tasted in 15 years, food associated with a specific person. A grandmother's kitchen, a holiday table, a place that no longer exists in any form except memory. The average last meal request runs close to 2,800 calories. That's not appetite. The calorie count tracks with emotional weight, not hunger. These are the heaviest foods from the most specific places in a person's past, ordered with a precision that has nothing to do with being full. John Wayne Gacy ordered a bucket of original recipe fried chicken for his last meal. He had managed 3 of that chain's restaurants before his arrest. The order is not a coincidence. It is the biography of a man whose entire legitimate public life was built around that kitchen, the fry oil, the counter, the bucket. The man he was before all of it happened, compressed into a single order. Timothy McVeigh, convicted of killing 168 people in the Oklahoma City bombing, requested 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. He ate them alone in his cell the night before his execution, not in the formal last meal window. No other food. Just the 2 pints, in the dark, without witnesses. Mint chocolate chip. 2 pints. That's a child's order. Not a symbolic one. Not a statement, just the flavor he wanted, twice, at the end. Prison staff confirmed he ate it alone. What that image means depends on what you bring to it. Some people find it humanizing. Some find it worse, somehow, than anything else he could have ordered. Here's what the data shows that people don't talk about enough. Inmates who order the smallest total amount of food are the most precise about what that food is. The men asking for 150 calories know exactly what those 150 calories are down to the brand and flavor. The men ordering 2,700 calories use generic descriptions. Precision and scarcity go together. The less you're ordering, the more specific you know how to be. A man who ordered his mother's exact recipe, a regional dish the prison kitchen had never made, ate it anyway when the result bore only loose resemblance to the real thing. He ate it anyway. That's the sentence that matters. Some inmates know the meal will be reported and choose it accordingly. They treat it as one more channel, one more word they can say. Number 4. The meal as final statement. A man executed in Oklahoma in the 1990s ordered SpaghettiOs, canned pasta in tomato sauce. When the meal arrived, the kitchen had substituted regular canned spaghetti. In his final statement, read aloud to witnesses before the lethal injection, he said, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." Those were his last recorded words, preserved in the execution record, cited in more than one piece of academic writing on the subject. The man had been on death row long enough to know with certainty that his final statement would be reported. He chose to spend it on the substitution. Whether that was genuine outrage or something else, dark humor. A comment on the gap between what the system promises and what it delivers depends entirely on who's interpreting it. The journalists covering the execution reported it straight. The detail spread. It has stayed in the record for 30 years. There's a formal channel for a condemned person's last words. The statement is read aloud in the chamber, recorded by prison staff, and most states publish it. It's official. It's serious. It's exactly what the system designed for that moment. And then there's the last meal request, which circulates through journalism and prison disclosures and ends up somewhere else entirely. It moves differently. It sticks differently. The formal last words are documentation. What a man ordered for dinner is the kind of detail people argue about at a kitchen table years later. The 1963 Olive case works the same way. The meal and the message were the same object. One olive, one pit placed deliberately in a jacket pocket. The man made the meaning explicit to the guards before the execution. He chose to communicate through the food because the food would travel further than the statement. The pizza for the homeless case from Tennessee is the version where the meal became the story after it was denied. The prison's refusal didn't silence the gesture, it amplified it. The message got out because it was blocked, not in spite of it. What these cases have in common is that the inmate understood the meal would be seen. They used it. The SpaghettiOs man used his final words to point back at the meal and the substitution. The distinction he was drawing between what was promised and what arrived is a pretty good summary of death row, told in one sentence about canned pasta. The strangest category is the one where the meal reveals something the inmate wasn't trying to say. Number 3. The meal that reveals everything. The connection between declining a last meal and maintaining innocence didn't come from the prisoners or their advocates. It came from the numbers. About 1 in 5 inmates in the records declined to request a special last meal at all. Among those who had maintained their innocence throughout their time on death row, that refusal rate was close to 3 times higher than among inmates who had admitted guilt. Inmates who admitted guilt requested more food, more calories, more brand-name items. Inmates who denied guilt were more likely to decline entirely or to accept only something small. The explanation that fits the data is straightforward. Eating the meal functions, on some level, as participating in the process. It says, I accept what comes next, at least enough to order dinner. For a person who believes they are about to be executed for something they did not do, that participation is not available to them. They cannot sit down and order a comfort meal from a system they believe is about to kill them for no just reason. So they don't. This doesn't prove anything about individual cases. The data is a pattern across hundreds of records. Any given person who declined could have declined for any number of reasons. The state cannot know in an individual case whether the refusal means what the pattern suggests. It proceeds regardless. About 1 in 25 people on death row are like that number from the research that examined it most closely is a floor. The real figure is probably higher. Nobody knows by exactly how much. A man in Georgia in 2011 declined his last meal. He had maintained his innocence for 20 years. His case drew more international attention than almost any other execution in that era. Significant evidence was disputed. His execution proceeded. He made his final statement. He didn't eat. Death penalty chaplains describe these refusals differently from the uneaten feast cases. The innocence claim refusals are usually decided early, sometimes days before the execution, documented with attorneys, stated formally. Not impulsive. One chaplain described a man who declined food, asked for coffee, and spent the last 3 hours talking about his children. The coffee went cold. That detail is in the record because a chaplain wrote it down. Most of what happens in those hours isn't written down. The system cannot sort the innocent from the guilty among those whose trays come back untouched. In the aggregate, the pattern is visible. In any specific cell, on any specific afternoon, it is invisible. The tray arrives. The tray is declined. The execution proceeds. The most consequential case in the history of the last meal tradition wasn't about innocence or guilt. It was about a policy that had lasted nearly a century and ended in an afternoon. Number 2. The end of the tradition. From 1976, when executions resumed in the United States, through September 22, 2011, the special last meal was standard practice in virtually every executing state. In Texas, it had been in place for close to 90 years. The state had carried out more executions than any other in the modern era. The tradition had survived the electric chair, the gas chamber, the shift to lethal injection, a Supreme Court decision that temporarily halted all executions, and decades of litigation. It had been extended to hundreds of condemned people, one at a time, through all of it. It did not survive one man ordering a meal he had no intention of touching. The September 2011 case, the one from number 6, produced a senator's letter by morning and a phone call by early afternoon. By the end of the day, the practice was gone. No legislative session, no extended review, no public comment period. One news cycle. Every condemned person in Texas since that date has received whatever the rest of the unit eats that day. A standard tray. Whatever's on the menu. No record of it is kept because there's nothing special to record. 3 inmates who already had execution dates at the time of the abolition received no special meal under the new policy. They had likely known for years what they were going to order. That information had no place to go. Prison staff who worked the death watch before and after 2011 describe a real difference in what those final hours feel like. Before, the meal arrives, it gets set out, it either gets eaten or it doesn't, it gets removed, something happens in the room. After, a tray comes through like any other tray, and it goes back like any other tray, and nothing about it is different from any other meal in any other cell on the unit. The former system was uncomfortable, the latter is cleaner. Neither one makes what follows easier to be a part of. The tradition that ended had been there longer than anyone working in Texas corrections had been alive. It predated almost every other feature of the modern execution process. It fell apart faster than any of them. The argument that finally ended it, that a convicted killer received a privilege his victim did not, had always been available. Someone just picked it up and used it. That's all it took. Now the last item, the one everything else has been building toward. Number 1. The refusal and what it means. You ask a man what he wants for his last meal. Sometimes he tells you. Sometimes he doesn't say anything. Sometimes he orders something elaborate and then doesn't touch it when it arrives. And sometimes, more often than most people know, he just says no. No special order. Whatever you're serving. Or nothing at all. About 1 in 5 inmates in the years that have been studied declined to request a special last meal. No single explanation covers all of them. Some had admitted guilt. Some maintained innocence. Some gave reasons. Most didn't. Here's what the refusal does to the logic of the tradition. The last meal exists to serve a specific institutional purpose. It lets the system say, we offered. We provided. He made a choice. We honored it. Whatever comes next, we did our part. That sentence, we gave him what he wanted, distributes the weight of what's about to happen across the whole procedure. It makes the execution feel like the end of a process, not the act of a state ending a human life. The man who refuses the meal breaks that sentence. He did not want what was offered. He does not accept the consolation. He will not sit down to dinner before the state kills him. The institution cannot say we gave him what he wanted, because what was offered was refused. There is no distribution of weight. There is just the execution and the empty tray. A chaplain who has sat in those rooms describes the time that remains after a refusal as a particular kind of silence. The inmate either talks or goes quiet. One account describes a man who declined food, spent the last hours writing letters, had the letters sealed and sent. The chaplain was present the entire time and does not know what the letters said. The man was executed. The letters went to whoever they were addressed to. That is everything that's known about it. The refusal is the most honest thing available in that situation, and it's the one the tradition was not built to accommodate. The meal is designed to make the last hours feel more human, more chosen, more dignified. It is designed to make the condemned person feel better about dying, and to make the people managing the process feel better about what they're doing. The person who refuses has understood something about what's actually being offered. They have seen through the courtesy to the function underneath it, and they've declined both. That is what the last meal is, when you strip everything away. A ritual designed to make an institution feel like something other than what it is. The kindest version of that reading is that it sometimes works. The man who ordered his mother's recipe and ate the approximation while thinking of her, it worked for him. The man who sat with the single olive and the pit, he used it for something it wasn't designed for. The man who ordered everything and ate nothing, he exposed the mechanism. And the man who said no to all of it, quietly, days before the execution, and spent the last hours writing letters he sealed before he died, he declined to participate in his own consolation. He refused to let the institution say it gave him what he needed. More than 1 in 5 of them refused. That number is higher than most people who follow these cases have ever heard. And the system, when faced with a refusal, does the only thing it can. It notes the declination in the record, removes the question from the process, and proceeds. Now step back with me for a second. 10 entries, 10 different things a condemned person can do with the last meal, and every single one of them tells you the same thing. It was never about the food. It never was. The comfort food orders the fried chicken, the brand name soda, the strawberries. Those are about what incarceration takes from a person and what they're reaching back for in the final hours. The fast food order with the exact topping specifications is a person trying to eat their way back to a specific afternoon in a specific year that no longer exists. The single olive is a man who understood he still had one thing left to do. The denied request is the system deciding it knows better than the condemned what the final gesture should be. The uneaten feast is one man dismantling 90 years of tradition with a full tray and an empty stomach. There are 4 ways to understand the last meal, and all 4 are true at the same time. The first is the humanitarian frame. The last meal is a civilizing gesture, a small mercy in a brutal process. The state says, "You are about to die at our hands, and we will let you choose your dinner first." That's the press release version, and it's not entirely wrong. For some people in some cells, it provides something real. The second is the ritual management frame. The meal is choreography. It makes the execution feel like the end of a deliberate process rather than the act of a state ending a life. It gives everyone involved something to do in the hours before and a record to point to after. The third is the agency frame. The meal is the last genuine choice available to a person who has had nearly every other choice removed. The cell, the schedule, the date, the method, the witnesses, all of it decided. The meal is the one variable left. That's why it matters more than the food. The fourth is the resistance frame. For the person who refuses, who declines the consolation, who orders food they don't intend to touch, who asks for dirt, who requests a pizza, for a stranger the meal is the last available act of non-compliance. It says, "I will not cooperate with my own consolation. I will not let this be comfortable." None of these frames fully explains the SpaghettiOs complaint, or the pit in the pocket, or the 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream eaten alone in a cell the night before. They explain parts of the picture. The rest is what's left when you take a specific human being and put them inside a process designed to reduce people to procedure, and they refuse to be fully reduced. That's where the picture never quite closes. That's what stays with you. You made it through all 10. Most people don't. They land on one of these and close the tab. You stayed. If something in here changed how you think about what happens behind those walls in the final hours, put it in the comments. Which one stayed with you, and why? And if you're not subscribed, this is the moment. More than 190 people have been removed from death row after being exonerated since 1973. For every one of them, somewhere in a prison's records, there is a last meal request or a notation that they declined one made during years they spent waiting for an execution that never came. The tray arrived. Or didn't. The appeal came through. The file stayed open. The meal tradition continues in most executing, not because anyone has shown it provides genuine comfort to the condemned, because no one has found a cleaner way to fill the final hours of a life the state has decided to end. The tray goes in. The tray comes out. Whatever is on it or isn't goes into the record. And the process moves forward, the way it always has, one name at a time.